Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karen Luhunga. I'm a dietitian at Gertrude's Hospital. Today we are going to discuss about breastfeeding, August being a month where we support and uh, promote breastfeeding. So today we are going to talk more about breastfeeding. Welcome. Okay, so we'll start by looking at a few definitions. We can say nutrition or good nutrition is about eating a healthy and balanced diet. And this also applies to our babies and newborn infants. So when we are having good nutrition, okay. So we are going to give time for others to join us, and then we shall continue in about 5 minutes' time. Okay, so we shall continue. So as I was saying, when we eat, we want to eat healthy. So, and a healthy diet is a balanced diet. So the process of us taking food and drink, we need to get nutrients out of this food, which then the body uses for growth, energy, and for repair and other functions. So these nutrients are what are contained in food, and we call them chemical compounds, which we now know as proteins, fats, carbohydrates, vitamins, and minerals. So once you eat your food, you digest it, you extract the nutrients, and then the body uses it for its various functions. So, why do we insist on good nutrition for babies? So, it is important because during infancy or early childhood is a very critical time for the development of a child so that they can be able to reach their full human potential when they grow up in terms of growth, physical growth, and also their mental capacity. So we say the most critical period is the first 1,000 days of life, which accounts from the time the baby is born until it is 2 years old. So it is a period when we lay the good foundations, or we lay foundations for good health, growth, and brain development for the rest of this infant's life. So, if we don't give good nutrition to our infants and babies, it leads to failure in early physical growth. So, you'll find a child with delayed motor skills. Probably they are not able to walk or sit on time. You find that in terms of their brain development, they might be delayed and not perform as well as expected, and also their behavioral development. So it is not just about filling their stomachs, but it's also about their development. So undernutrition later on is also associated with a shorter adult height. So the person will end up being shorter than what they're intended to be. Their schooling will be a struggle, and therefore, in the long run, reduced economic productivity. So if the brain is not fed well in the first 2 years of life, or in infancy or early childhood, then you have problems with delay in cognitive or brain function, which will cause a child to have impaired school performance, poor memory, and also reduced social skills. So we can see that nutrition affects all round development of a person. So apart from that, good nutrition will also improve the health and immunity of a child. So immunity helps to reduce a occurrence of disease. If your immunity is low, then you experience ill health more often, and this might result in death. So better nutrition is related to improved child health, stronger immune system, and it also lowers the risk of diseases such as diabetes and hypertension later on in life. So, what is the role of breastfeeding in all this? So, today we are going to mainly discuss nutrition through breastfeeding for infants. So, breastfeeding is recognized as the best, and what I would say gold standard as far as feeding of infants is concerned. So, we are supposed to do it for about 6 months exclusively, and then continue until 2 years and beyond as we introduce complementary foods. So, gold standard means that anything that provides nutrients aside from what uh, the breast milk provides, whether less or more, is then considered not to be what the infant requires. So let not people tell you probably you have to give a certain type of milk because it contains more of a certain nutrient, because having more doesn't necessarily mean that it is good for your infant. The way it is provided for in breast milk is exactly in the amounts that the infant requires. So this month we observed a breastfeeding week every August since 1992, between 1st and 7th of August. Internationally, World Breastfeeding Week is observed. It is meant to promote breastfeeding and create awareness and also arouse actions on themes related to breastfeeding. So the whole idea is to talk about breastfeeding and promote it so that more and more mothers would make the choice to do breastfeeding for their babies. So each year there is a different theme, and this year's theme advocates for building and strengthening support systems for breastfeeding mothers. So that is the theme for this year, to prioritize breastfeeding and create sustainable support systems that will enable all mothers who are willing to breastfeed for as long as they are willing to. So how is this then done? So to be able to support mothers, one of the things that we try to do from our side as healthcare workers is to provide skilled breastfeeding counseling right from the antenatal period, because it is important for a mother when she's expectant to make the decision to breastfeed the child even before the child is born. So once the child is born, she needs to do a lot of skin to skin contact and early initiation of breastfeeding within 1 hour, within the time the baby is born. And then she needs to be able to practice rooming in. Rooming in means the baby is not removed from the side of the mother and taken to a holding area or a nursing or a nursery unless the child is unwell. But if the child is well, she should stay with the mother for the duration they are in the hospital, and even when she goes home, she should be able to stay with the child throughout the time. So the other thing we do is to enforce what we call the International Code for Marketing of Breast Milk Substitutes, which is where we encourage mothers to breastfeed rather than make available or create an environment where breast milk substitutes are seen as an equal or a better feeding option for babies. So we always promote breast feeding and support the mothers. So creating enabling environments at home. So for a support system at home, you have to have people who care for you. And in the workplaces, for example, you can have lactation rooms. You can have flexible hours that allow mothers to go and breastfeed or to express their milk and to have storage areas so that during their breaks, they can be able to do this. And then they could get paid maternity leave. I think it by law, we are allowed up to 90 days if you are working of paid maternity leave, and in some places you can get up to 6 months. So this is a way of creating an enabling environment that now this mother who has made the decision to breastfeed can be able to do it with the least problems. So we also have expanding of legal protections so that it is put in law that within a country like in Kenya, that maternity leave, paid maternity leave, is expected of all employers. And also creating spaces where mothers can either breastfeed their babies or express their milk once they are back at work. So why do we insist on breastfeeding and supporting it? Of course, it has numerous advantages, which maybe some of us already know, but we shall go over them again. So the advantages to the infant. So one of them being that, we had talked about at the beginning, is that breastfeeding or breast milk is nutritionally adequate for the infant. All the nutrients in the correct amount are found in breast milk. Breast milk is also hygienic because it doesn't require any preparation, as long as the mother observes basic hygiene. Mind you, you don't have to clean your breasts every time you breastfeed the baby. If you do that, you might even create soreness around the breast. So as long as you take 1 shower per day, that is good enough as far as hygiene is concerned. So it comes in the correct temperature. You don't need to prepare it anyway. And then it has a built-in supply regulator, which means it is produced according to the needs of the baby. It helps the mother and the baby to bond in a special way. Breastfeeding improves immunity and therefore protection, gives the baby protection against diseases like diarrhea, ear and chest infections, and also reduces the chances of eczema and allergies. You find that most babies would start having is eczema flare-ups once you start giving them different types of milks. I know it is true some mothers would have to do some eliminations from their diet in terms of some foods when their babies have eczema, but if you do exclusive breastfeeding, chances of having flare-ups are much less than when you use substitutes, and also in terms of allergies. So once the baby has benefited, also then there is benefits for the mother. So if you do exclusive breastfeeding, you notice at the beginning when the baby is new, as you start breastfeeding, you feel some contractions in your uterus or some pain. So this serves as helping the uterus to go back to normal size. The same hormone that releases milk also causes the contractions, and so it helps for your uterus to go back to size. It lowers the risk of cancers like breast cancer and ovarian cancer, and in some cases can be used as a birth control measure, as long as if you do exclusive breastfeeding, there are chances that you don't return to your normal menstrual cycle, and during this time, as long as you have not received your period, then you can use it as a birth control. Another one, which is controversial, is that it can help you to go back to your pre-pregnancy weight. I know most people feel that when you are lactating, you need to gain weight, but it's not true. It is actually supposed to help you go back to your pregnancy weight. So breast milk is also good for the environment because breastfeeding is natural. So it reduces the toll on the environment, which comes with the production of formula and its packaging and waste matter that comes with the industry. So all round, breastfeeding is advantageous. So once you make the decision, which we hope is everyone, to breastfeed, then the breastfeeding, for it to be fulfilling, it has to be effective. So for effective breastfeeding, it's important to get a good latch. If you don't get a good latch, then you get pain and discomfort and you become discouraged as far as breastfeeding is concerned. So the first step is that you hold your breast 4 fingers below and 1 thumb up, so that you support the weight of the breast. Then you touch the breast to the baby's mouth and wait for the baby to open his mouth. Once the mouth is open, you push the breast inside and you make sure the baby takes in as much breast as possible, such that the areola is in his mouth. And once that happens, then you have a good latch. If the baby latches onto the nipple only, then you get a lot of friction and end up with sore nipples. So once you get a good latch, you can also have to get a good latch, you can also try different positions. So we have a cross cradle position. You can have the football. So the football clutch, that one usually works very well with small or preterm babies. Then for mothers who have had a C-section and they are still having pain, they can try feeding while lying down, and also the other positions like the normal cradle, which we are all used to. So you can try different positions as long as you can get a good latch so that you're comfortable while feeding the baby. So another way of ensuring that our feeding is effective is when we practice what we call responsive feeding. So during responsive feeding, you are able to tell your baby's hunger cues. So if we see in this diagram, you can see you have what we call the early cues, and then you have mid cues, and then you have late cues. So if you are doing responsive feeding, you'll be able to pick up the early cues and feed your baby before she becomes stressed out, and then you have to calm her down before you're able to feed. So you'll notice that your baby starts to stir, starts to open their mouth and turning their head or rooting, looking for the breast. So this is the best time to breastfeed. And even this time is when you get a good latch because the baby is still calm. If you don't respond at this time, then we go to the mid cue. So the baby will start stretching out, the movement become more agitated, then they will bring their hand to mouth to suck on the fingers as a way of soothing themselves. If you don't respond here, then now they start crying. So saying a baby is crying and they are hungry is actually a late sign of hunger. And this baby will not latch on the breast, might even fight at it. And then you have to soothe it first before they are able to breastfeed. So it's important to pick out early cues so that breastfeeding is effective. So once the baby has breastfed, then they've had enough, then they show what we call the satiety cues. So this is contentment. So contentment is, you see the baby has released the breast, they look happy and satisfied and even fall asleep. So if they are suckling at the breast, you notice that they have reduced the suckling, and even audible swallowing, you can't hear it anymore. So you know now the baby is full. So when they are hungry, you will notice that they have a clutched fist, and once they're full, they will release their hands and relax and sleep. And that's how you tell now my baby has had enough. Then you burp them and you lay them to sleep. So another way of telling that your baby has had enough, which is not 100%, is also on duration of feeding. So how many times the child feeds in 24 hours is important to monitor. It can be 8 or up to 12 times. So on average, 2 to 3 hours. And you don't schedule your baby's feeding. When you are doing exclusive breastfeeding, by the way, we do it on demand. But for you to be able to tell whether it is effective, you will count every 2 or 3 hours that the baby has fed. So how long does a breastfeed last? Generally around 20 to 30 minutes. If it lasts more than that, then it means the baby is not getting enough milk to fill their stomach within a short time. So probably there is something wrong with your latching, or there is something not right with the baby. Maybe they might be having a condition that is causing them not to have enough energy. So if the baby takes too long to breastfeed, then it might be a reason for you to visit your healthcare provider to find out what is going on. So then you can also check at wet diapers per day. So this is very important, especially for first-time mothers. When you leave the hospital, always check the number of diapers that the baby has filled, because this is a sure way of telling whether the baby has had enough milk, especially when you're doing exclusive breastfeeding. Because sometimes this happens, then the baby is not getting enough, then they start to become lethargic and sleep for long hours at a time, and then the mother will feel probably the baby is just sleeping. So if the baby goes more than 4 hours, has not fed, at the end of the day you have not changed the diaper, then this is a danger sign that your baby is becoming dehydrated, and therefore you must bring them to the hospital to be checked out. So always check the diapers. So another effective way of telling whether you're feeding baby well is now doing growth monitoring. So in the first year of life, you are required to take your baby for well baby checks every month. And during this time, the length is measured, the health circumference is measured, and the weight also is measured. So on average, a baby will double their weight between 4 to 6 months. So check the curve and see how it is being plotted. So if you have that kind of curve, you will see that if your baby's measurements are plotted within what is marked as the white area, then you know your baby is growing well. If it is in the green area where it's written risk of overweight and obesity, then you know probably you might be overfeeding and you need to turn down. But we don't overfeeding when it comes to breastfeeding. It means when you use feeding for any other reason apart from hunger. If you teach the baby to stress feed, to soothe themselves with feeding, or to spend time on feeding other than when they are hungry. So that's how breast overfeeding can occur with breastfeeding. Other than that, they are supposed to feed by hunger. So if they are underweight, then that is a danger sign. Also, you need to have an assessment so that we check whether feeding is adequate, and then we advise accordingly. Severely underweight, we might end up with admission so that the baby is fed and we see if the feeding is the issue or other conditions. So make sure you bring your baby for monthly checkups, especially in the first 1 year. So, all in all, you need to be able to trust your body, trust your baby. Trust your baby in terms of hunger and satiety cues, and trust yourself in terms of being confident that you are able to supply enough milk that can sustain the growth of your baby. So it can take up to 6 weeks to master breastfeeding. So be patient with yourself and take your time. Support is key. You need lots and lots of support from family members, from healthcare facilities, and we are here to assist so that we ensure that every feeding you give your baby is like a gift of love. And make sure you relax. Relax all the time. Give your self time to rest and enjoy motherhood rather than stressing that it's not enough. Okay, so how do we make sure that mommy has enough milk? So we have talked about the baby getting enough, but we need also to take care of the mother. Like we said, she needs support. So one of the good support that we can give a mother is to make sure that she gets good nutrition. Now, they sometimes people talk about certain foods as superfoods that would increase breast milk, but on the background, what is most important is that she gets a healthy and balanced diet. So if you can get something out of all the food groups, then you should be okay. So the different food groups are as listed. We have grains and tubers, you have legumes, you have dairy products. So for grains, you can choose anything from maize, millet, sorghum, and then and make products like porridge, ugali, you can see them. And then apart from grains, you can also get your carbs from potatoes, sweet potatoes, cassava, matoke. So those ones will supply the energy in your diet. Then you need protein. So protein is for repair and to make sure you supply good quality milk. And remember, after delivery, you've had losses in terms of blood and your body needs to heal. So protein is important. So you can get protein from plant sources like beans, or peas, or you can get also from dairy products. You can have yogurt, you can have cheese, you can have fresh milk. But a caution when it comes to dairy products, if you overdo them, sometimes it translates to tummy problems for your babies. So don't overdo milk. Drinking a lot of milk doesn't necessarily translate to producing a good amount of milk. So take maybe 1 or 2 cups per day. That should be enough. Sometimes it might cause tummy problems for your baby if you overdo it. So you can also get good quality protein from animal flesh like chicken and fish, and also eggs. Eat a variety of vegetables. So when it comes to vegetables and fruit, we go by colors. The wider your choice as far as colors is concerned, the better. Then eat some nuts and seeds to get good quality oils and minerals like iron and zinc, which are important for your immune system and also for the baby. And then also take some oils for your energy. Apologies. Okay, sorry, we had technical issues, but we are back. So, as I was talking about food for the mother, we were saying that what you need is a balanced diet. Have something from every food group as listed at the end of the day, so that you can be able to make milk that contains the right balance of nutrients for your baby. But mind you, even if you don't eat very well, usually you only need to drink well. Na the body takes out from your reserves. So you find that sometimes some mothers will be breastfeeding and they lose too much weight because they don't eat enough to balance between the breastfeeding and what their needs are. So what then are their needs? So as a mother, you only need an extra 300 calories per day to support breastfeeding, which generally means like 2 cups of porridge, where 1 cup can be the size of a glass 250 mls. So as you see, you don't require to eat too much food. Sometimes we meet people who say, I have to eat so that I make milk. It generally is not true. You just need to eat enough and make sure you hydrate well. So some of the nutrients that you need to be concerned about, like I mentioned earlier, is protein, because protein is needed for the milk and it's needed also for your recovery from childbirth. So if you don't intake much, you will break down your muscles and end up costing your health, as the baby continues to get the milk that is in the right proportion as far as protein is concerned. Calcium is also important. You notice dairy or milk is one of the main sources of calcium in diet. So if the mother is not intaking enough, then you'll end up with pains. You will start having muscle cramping. You find some people say their teeth are hurting or their backs are aching, because now the body is removing calcium from where it is stored to be able to make the milk. The milk always takes priority. So iron is another thing, not so much because breast milk contains large amounts of iron, but it's mostly for the recovery of the mother, together with folate. And then mwishowe, you need to make sure you hydrate well. So hydration means you never feel thirsty. If you are at the point that you are feeling thirsty, then you are dehydrated and it's not good for a lactating mother. Take up to 3 to 4 liters of fluid per day. It doesn't have to be a certain type of fluid, like probably porridge or tea. You can even drink water, you can drink soups, you can drink herbal teas. Some people take things like fenugreek or dill teas. Those are okay. Whatever might come with your culture that is promoted as a good fluid for a lactating mother to take, that one you can also take. But make sure you take within what is enough, because you don't need to be gaining too much weight during lactation. So that's just pictorial of the different types of foods, which I think we had gone through. So lastly, we shall go over a few of the problems that we encounter when we are breastfeeding. So a most common one is sore and cracked nipples. So this one is usually caused when the baby is not latching properly. Remember, I'd said if the baby latches on the nipple, then there's too much friction as the baby suckles too much to try to get milk out of the nipple, and then you end up with the sores. So the best way to deal with this is to practice different position to get a good latch. And we can also apply breast milk after a feed, and then when it dries, it helps with the healing process. Another problem might be engorgement. So engorgement is different from a full breast. When you are engorged, the breast is hard and it is swollen. You might have some fever and feel pain. Again, this is caused probably by poor attachment, so that the baby is not able to take out the milk in good amounts, or we are not expressing as frequently or feeding the baby as frequently as they would require. So to sort this one out, you might want to express either by using pump or hand to remove the extra milk from the breast, which then you can feed the baby, or maybe store it for later use if the baby is more than a month old. You can use a warm compress before feed in order to help the milk to flow out, and use a cold compress between feeds to be able to soothe the pain. Another very common problem is low milk supply. A lot of mothers complain, my milk is not enough for the baby. Remember, we talked about how a baby tells you whether they have had enough or not. And then, if they show that they haven't had enough, then probably you are not having enough milk. So this one will have to be assessed first, and not by word of mouth that you feel. When the mother says she feels that the baby is not getting enough, we check all those parameters first before we agree, the ones we had talked about as far as assessing an effective breastfeed. So one of the issues that come into play when you have low supply of milk is when we delay initiating breastfeeding after delivery, or if the mother had complications like illness and was not able to breastfeed the baby on time. If we demand that we sleep all night, remember, the hormone for producing milk, which is prolactin, is released most during the night, and therefore we encourage in the first few months that you do a lot of night feeds. When the mother is stressed and is tired, then milk will be affected. So you can eat well, but if you are stressed or tired, it will still affect the release of milk. The other thing is lack of confidence, especially when you have a new mothers. You know, when you are in pregnancy, you never think about how breastfeeding. Maybe people don't talk much about how it is not easy, that it's a skill that you learn. So once you start breastfeeding, you need to have confidence. So that's part of your support system, that people around you give you confidence and you feel confident. When you start feeding a baby, you don't start by thinking that I really don't have milk, but you start by thinking that I have enough milk for the baby. So no bonding where you don't room in with your baby, you don't stay with the baby throughout. So if you don't get skin to skin contact, then that one can affect milk production. If we rush into using breast milk substitutes, can also reduce milk supply. How this happens is because, remember, breastfeeding is a supply and demand thing. So if you reduce the demand by not giving the baby breast and substitute with formula, then the process of producing is also reduced, because the brain will not be triggered. An empty breast is what triggers production. So if you are not feeding on the breast and waiting for it to fill, it will never fill. You need to empty so that you trigger more production. So don't be in a rush to use a substitutes. Try to breastfeed first. So skilled support is available in the healthcare system, including ours, where you feel that you have tried what you can and you are still not getting, so you can getting the results you are desiring, so you can get support from health facilities. So if you don't eat well, of course, especially hydration, and also not getting enough skin to skin contact, like I said. So another issue would be blocked ducts. So this one happens when you are not able to remove milk from all parts or one part of the breast. If we do short and infrequent feeds so that the milk doesn't flow out of the breast as it's supposed to, or if our breasts are damaged. So to sort this one out, we always practice good latching. Make sure you wear loose clothing, because if your breasts are full and you wear a tight bra, that one will result in blocked ducts. Once they are blocked, probably you can do massage gently towards the nipple. As you massage gently towards the nipple, it helps to let down the milk and help it to flow out. Use the cold warm compress, and then adjust your feeding positions so that the baby can feed more and suck hard and remove where the block is. Another issue is also the poor latching. So when the baby is latching well, you should not feel pain when the baby is suckling. You should be able to see more areola, which is the dark area above the breast, and more above the breast than below. And then the baby's mouth should be wide open and the lower lip should be turned out. If the lip is turned in, the baby cannot suck well. That's why we wait for the baby to open the mouth wide before you place the breast inside. And the chin should be either touching or almost touching on the breast. So if this is not happening while you are breastfeeding, you need to slowly release the breast from the mouth and then practice again until you get a good latch. Otherwise, you will end up with sore nipples. Okay, so that's what I had for us today. So I give time for any questions or comments. So Lucky says, my baby feeds a lot at night and almost hourly, and I rub feet to wake her up, but she doesn't latch. So, like we said, feeding is by demand. So, if the baby is feeding and has shown you the signs that they've had enough, we allow them to sleep. But if they sleep for too long, let's say more than 4 hours, is when you should wake them up. And sometimes they even feed when they are half asleep. So that's why we practice different positions even for night to be able to make sure that the baby feeds. Wamboi is asking for the PDF. That one we can get to you. That's okay. So feel free to visit us at any of our facilities if you have any questions or require support as far as breastfeeding is concerned. Thank you.